I didn't want my youth, my soul, to be eaten alive by a gray, lifeless city. That thought haunted Michael Reese, a 52-year-old man walking alone beneath the towering steel and glass of New York's financial district. The sidewalk buzzed with endless foot traffic, yet he felt invisible. After graduating from a top university, Michael had landed a coveted job at a tech giant. Everyone envied him, but beneath the perks and prestige, he felt nothing but soul-crushing monotony. Day after day, he endured overtime, unfair critiques from his supervisor, and a mountain of meaningless reports. Nothing made him feel alive. Everything felt hollow. Sure, people might say, "Your salary's great. Why complain?" But something inside him had long withered. Michael had passed 40 without a single meaningful romantic experience. And the phrase, "you only live once," echoed louder in his mind with every passing week. What if he died like this, pointless, unfulfilled? Then one morning, as if awakening from a trance, Michael quit. He handed in his resignation, walked out of the office, and returned to his apartment with no destination in mind. Oddly, one place kept whispering to him, India. As a child, he had imagined the vibrant markets, the scent of curry and sandalwood, the colorful saris, the mystic temples, and the peaceful chaos of a land where past and present existed side by side. Maybe, just maybe, India could open a door to something new. He booked a one-way ticket, packed a single bag, and left behind his carefully constructed life. As the plane landed in Delhi, the heat punched him like a welcome he hadn't prepared for. The air was heavy with dust, spices, and life. Outside the airport, cabbies swarmed him with offers and questions. It was overwhelming but thrilling. I really did it, he thought. He spent a few days exploring Delhi. The Red Fort, street vendors sizzling spices into the air, rickshaws weaving through chaos like dancers. But he didn't come to India for Instagram shots. He wanted depth. He wanted to feel a culture that hadn't been sanitized by globalization. Whispers from fellow travelers and obscure online forums led him to a different path. The foothills of the Himalayas, where traditions endured and foreign faces were rare. They spoke of rural villages, nestled in quiet valleys, where ancient customs still thrived. So he took their advice. Michael boarded a rickety overnight bus and endured a grueling journey north. He dozed, talked with strangers, shared simple meals. Many locals eyed him with a mix of curiosity and kindness. When asked why he came to such a remote place, he replied, in broken Hindi and bits of English, "I'm looking for a new life, a new start." Their faces softened at his honesty. Eventually, Michael arrived in a quiet village perched between terraced hills and dense forest. There were no hotels, only stone houses, goats, barefoot children, and women in vibrant shawls carrying baskets on their heads. When he stepped off the dusty road, all eyes turned to him. His presence was like a ripple in a still pond. He felt a mix of fear and warmth. Near the village entrance, an elderly man waved him over to a small tea stall. He was offered a steaming glass of masala chai and asked, in slow English, "Where are you from and why here?" Michael introduced himself. The man nodded thoughtfully and said he knew someone who had helped foreign guests before. Soon, a young man arrived. His name was Arjun, around 30, with fluent English and a warm smile. He had once worked in Mumbai and knew the outside world. Arjun offered to show Michael around and helped him find a place to stay, with an elderly widow who welcomed him like a long-lost grandson. With Arjun translating, Michael learned from her about the village's customs, food, and way of life. Her laughter was infectious, and her care felt sincere. Over the next days, Michael wandered the village, speaking with locals, observing their rhythms. And then he noticed something odd. Where were the men? Women worked in fields, children played, but the presence of adult males was scarce. When he asked Arjun, the reply surprised him. "Our men often leave," Arjun said. "They go to cities to work. Many don't return for years. So, some communities here have old traditions, like shared marriage." Michael blinked. Shared marriage? Arjun nodded. Polygamy. In reverse, too. A woman may marry more than one man, or a man may marry more than one woman. It's rare now, but in remote areas, some families still follow it. Michael was stunned. In New York, the idea was unthinkable. Here, it was part of survival and social cohesion. This tradition, Arjun continued, was born out of necessity, when there were too few men and too many mouths to feed. Kept families strong, children cared for. And if done within the customs, it's accepted by the village. Michael's mind reeled. What kind of world had he entered? But instead of recoiling, he found himself drawn deeper. He began to interact more closely with the villagers, learning their stories and joining their festivals. And then, one afternoon, as the sun dipped low behind the peaks, he was invited to a celebration in the village center, a gathering that would change everything. The village came alive just once or twice a year for a special celebration. Children twirled in colorful clothes, and women sang and danced in a local dialect that rose and fell like poetry on the breeze. Michael stood quietly at the edge of the gathering, watching with a lightness in his heart he hadn't felt in years. That's when Arjun approached him with a gentle smile. "Come, I'd like you to meet my sister." Her name was Fatima. She looked to be around 25, with warm brown skin and striking, soulful eyes. She wasn't talkative, but her soft smile had a comforting warmth that spoke louder than words. With Arjun's help, she greeted Michael in halting French. "My brother has told me about you. You're from New York? Will you be staying long?" Michael nodded, a little shy. "I hope so. I need to rest for a while, and I like it here." Fatima's smile brightened. "Then please visit us often. My mother will like you too." And so Michael met Fatima's family. Her mother, dressed in a traditional sari, greeted him with kindness. Her father had passed away years ago. Most of her siblings had moved to other regions to work, leaving only Fatima and Arjun in the family home. Over the following weeks, Michael grew close to them. He and Fatima would stroll quietly through the fields, speaking in broken phrases with Arjun translating when needed. Despite the language barrier, something about Fatima's calm presence made him feel at ease. She wasn't flashy or forward, just quietly present, like a warm ember in the cold. But as time passed, Michael began to notice something unusual. The village was full of women and children. But where were the young men? On a walk the day after the celebration, women smiled at him. Some waved. Others stopped him to offer tea or sweets. A few asked, shyly, curiously, if he'd help with farming chores. At first, he thought it was just small-town friendliness until he asked Arjun. Arjun chuckled. "We don't have many young men around. Most leave to find work in cities. People here are curious about strangers. And there's a tradition. If a man can support more than one wife, he may do so. It's rare now, but still possible." Michael blinked. "You're saying it's allowed here? To marry more than one woman?" Arjun shrugged. "This village has always lived by its own rules. The women carry a lot of the family burden, especially with so many men gone. The tradition isn't widespread anymore, but for some families, it's still part of life." Michael couldn't believe it. Back home, even a single serious relationship had eluded him for years. Marriage? Multiple wives? It was surreal, but the idea lingered. His old life in New York felt like a dead end. Here, at least, there was a flicker of something: community, warmth, even family. And perhaps, even unconventional love. The villagers didn't treat him like an outsider. They welcomed him, encouraged him, even offered him small ways to integrate. Felt possible. One evening, Michael was invited to a gathering at Fatima's home. A fire crackled in the center of their courtyard. Fatima, Arjun, and a few neighbors played traditional instruments, their songs floating into the star-filled sky. Michael clapped along, awkward but joyful. After a few glasses of tea, the mood softened. Fatima turned to him with a tender expression. "Brother, do you like our village? Have you thought about staying?" Michael's heart skipped. He saw something shy but sincere in her eyes. "I do," he said honestly. "More than I expected." Fatima smiled, cheeks flushed. "My mother and brothers like you very much. If you wish, you could become part of our family." His breath caught. It was a serious offer. And then he remembered Arjun's earlier words. Some families still followed the tradition of plural marriage. It wasn't just Fatima. There was Aisha, who ran the bakery near the mosque. Samira, who had led the festival songs. Khadija, who wove carpets for a living. They had all shown a kind of gentle interest, curious eyes, soft greetings in broken French. They weren't throwing themselves at him, but they weren't indifferent either. Michael began spending time with the village elders, especially a man named Hassan, who told him stories of their customs. Hassan explained that for generations, this community had survived through its own rules, often separated from the rest of the world. The tradition of one man sharing a household with multiple women was rooted not just in culture, but in necessity. Long ago, tribal conflicts and illness had reduced the male population. To ensure that families continued, surviving men sometimes formed extended households. Michael asked gently, "Did the women accept this?" Hassan nodded. "In our way of life, family unity is about care and responsibility. It's not just about romance. It's about survival, support, and belonging." Today, the tradition was rare, but not gone. "If you find closeness with more than one woman," Hassan said, "and they feel the same, no one here would judge. But you must be prepared. You'd carry the responsibility." Michael felt torn but also curious. Could this be a new beginning? After 2 months, he no longer felt like a guest. He woke early to help gather wood, haul water, and mend fences. He shared bread and tea with Fatima's family and greeted neighbors with practiced smiles. The simplicity, the shared rhythms of life, it gave him a peace he never knew he craved. And then, one evening, Fatima spoke again. "My mother thinks highly of you," she said quietly. "And, if you agree, she would like you to live with us, to become family." Michael's heart leapt. That was it. A choice. A life. A future. Fatima blushed slightly. "But you don't have to choose only one. If your heart finds space for more, and they feel the same, our customs understand." And she wasn't alone in saying that. The next morning, while stopping by the bakery, Aisha gently asked him if he'd considered staying for good. Her eyes hinted at something more. Michael stood at a crossroads he'd never imagined. Yet, for the first time, it didn't feel like he was lost. Felt like he'd arrived. Softly, Aisha had said, "Men who wish to build a family are welcome in our village. I've come to care about you too. Have you thought about staying?" Michael offered a polite smile, but inside, he felt the stirrings of discomfort. "I feel something special with Fatima," he admitted. Aisha smiled gently, not hurt, just understanding. "That's good. And if, over time, you feel affection for another within our tradition, that can be possible too." To someone from New York, this kind of suggestion might have seemed absurd. But here, it wasn't fantasy, it was reality. And more than one woman approached him with the same quiet openness. One evening, after Michael had spent the afternoon sharing stories about his life in America with the village children, Samira, who had led the festival songs, approached him. "You're kind," she said, "and the children like you. I think someone like you could find his place here." Michael's heart was a tangle of wonder and confusion. These weren't just words. These women meant it. Could he really live this way? Build a life with not just one woman, but several, each of whom respected and cared for him, and whom he admired in return. He thought long and hard. If he went back to New York, he'd have to start all over. Find another job, return to a life that had never truly fulfilled him. But here was a chance to build something radically different. Something deeply human. Something real. Was it too radical a decision? He asked himself. But the villagers didn't judge. Their attitude was simple. If everyone agreed, and respect guided the relationship, then the community would embrace it. Fatima, too, had grown closer to Michael with each passing day. Yet he couldn't ignore the quiet, sincere gestures of women like Aisha and Samira. One part of him wondered, is it wrong to care for more than one? But here, exclusivity wasn't necessarily the rule. The idea of an extended family built on mutual respect wasn't frowned upon. It was possible. Eventually, Michael decided it was time to speak honestly with Fatima. Fatima, he said, you're the one I feel closest to, but others have shown me affection. And in this village that seems to be accepted. What do we do with that? Fatima was quiet for a long while. Then, in a calm, steady voice, she replied, in our traditions, if there is understanding and respect between everyone, it's not seen as wrong for a family to grow. But for me, sincerity matters. No neglect, no lies. Here, being the man in such a family doesn't mean power, it means responsibility. Her answer was not just acceptance. It was a window into how deeply this community valued honesty and care. Michael finally understood. This wasn't about ego or indulgence. It was about connection, consent, and a shared life. And after deep reflection, he made his choice. I'm ready, he said. I'll take this step with my whole heart. A life he couldn't have imagined back in America had become his reality. And it was time to honor that. He spoke to Fatima's mother first. I'd like to build a life with your daughter, he said earnestly. Her smile was full of grace. Then we'll begin preparations, she said, then added, are there others you wish to invite into this family? Michael hesitated. Then, truthfully, yes, Isha and Samira. I believe they care for me too, and I care for them. At first, it felt awkward to say aloud, but Fatima's mother simply nodded, kindly. Then speak to them. Make sure their feelings are sincere, and that they agree to this life. So Michael did. One by one, he had quiet, heartfelt conversations with each of the women. Fatima, Isha, Samira, and each of them, after thought and reflection, said yes. Yes to joining a family together. Yes to building something sacred and shared. Michael could hardly believe it. He feared jealousy, tension, but what he found instead was openness. Each woman had grown up in this culture, and each knew what it meant. They talked amongst themselves and to him with honesty. What mattered was not tradition for tradition's sake, but building a family grounded in mutual care. Michael vowed to carry his share, not just at home but in the village. Soon, the elders, the village chief, and the families gathered to plan the ceremonial unions. While it might not be recognized by the country's formal laws, within the fabric of this ancient community, it was completely valid. On the day of the celebration, the village was alive with song, color, and joy. Musicians played lively rhythms. Women cooked abundant feasts. Children danced under strings of handmade decorations. Michael wore a simple but dignified outfit, adorned with local embroidery. Fatima, Aisha, and Samira appeared together, dressed in stunning traditional garments that shimmered in the sun. For a moment, he wondered if this was still real. But as they approached him, smiling, everything felt more vivid than ever. The ceremony took place in the open village square. Blessings were given, hands were clasped, and warm wishes flowed from every corner. As he stood among them, Michael felt the weight of the moment and the lightness of joy. With Fatima, he felt deep peace. With Aisha, laughter came easily. With Samira, there was a calm connection. This was a man who once thought he'd never have a family, now surrounded by one built from something entirely unexpected. Life, he realized, was unpredictable. After the ceremony, the music and dancing continued deep into the night. Michael looked at the sky above the village and promised himself, I will never forget this day. But more than that, he knew, this is only the beginning. The next chapter started with all four of them moving into a modest home on the village's edge. Fatima felt bittersweet leaving her family's home but excited to begin anew. Aisha and Samira were eager too. The home became theirs together. Organizing furniture, setting up a kitchen, planting a small garden, it was a joint effort. Neighbors offered tools and advice, utensils and laughter. Each woman contributed to the home in her way. Fatima managed the cooking and household rhythm. Aisha continued baking bread at the village bakery, supporting the family income. Samira crafted traditional goods and sold them in nearby markets. Michael threw himself into village life, learning to farm, helping repair homes, even translating for the rare tourist who passed through. Each evening, they gathered for dinner, shared stories, and listened to village songs under candlelight. Some nights, They laughed over Aisha's delicious bread. Others, they listened as Samira told stories about ancient customs handed down from her grandmother. There were challenges, of course there were, but more than that, there was unity, there was peace, and most importantly, there was love. Fatima always had a kind word for everyone, and Michael never stopped sharing the stories and lessons life had given him. First, he worried, how could a shared family like this avoid jealousy? But to his surprise, the women got along beautifully. When disagreements arose, they talked openly and with respect. Each of them honored the time and presence he gave them, and he, in turn, showed his commitment not just with words but through action. Naturally, not every day was perfect. If Michael spent a little more time with one partner, the others might feel left out. But he learned. He learned to notice, to balance, to be fair in time and attention. And the women supported each other, too. I'll help at the bakery today, so you can spend time with Michael, one would say to the other, smiling with understanding. Even during hard times, especially then, Michael questioned himself. Can I really support a family like this? But the village had a way of answering. If food was short, neighbors shared. If there was illness, the elders came to help. When Michael fell sick, his 3 partners cared for him tenderly, taking turns preparing herbal remedies from the land. Living in this community wasn't just about survival, it was about lifting one another up. Months passed since the day of celebration, and Michael was no longer a visitor. He was woven into the fabric of the village. He gave his thoughts at meetings. He helped plan irrigation improvements and festival activities. Sometimes he suggested ideas from his life in New York, like renovating a few homes to host guests. At first, the elders hesitated, but they trusted him. So they began. A few houses opened their doors to visitors, and Fatima, Aisha, and Samira were the heart of it, sharing food, songs, and customs with curious travelers. Slowly, new life trickled in. New conversations. New appreciation for the village's unique identity. Michael had become not just a husband, but a bridge between worlds. He found himself thinking about children. So did the women. And then one day, Fatima announced the news. She was pregnant. Michael's heart swelled. I'm going to be a father, he whispered to himself, feeling a strange mix of awe and vulnerability. The village erupted with joy. Now your family here is truly beginning, neighbors said with beaming smiles. Aisha and Samira didn't grow jealous. They cared for Fatima, offered support, and stood by her side like sisters. And months later, under the glow of lanterns and midwife hands, Fatima gave birth to a healthy baby boy. The women of the village helped with the delivery, their songs and chants guiding new life into the world. When Michael held the baby's tiny hand, his breath caught. This is everything, he thought. He had become a father, not in New York, but here, in a land that once seemed impossibly distant. Later, both Aisha and Samira also experienced the joy of motherhood. Children filled the house. Laughter echoed through its clay walls. Each evening, Michael and his wives gently rocked the little ones to sleep, then sat outside under the stars, basking in a peace he had never known. I never imagined life would lead us here, he said one night. Fatima, Aisha, and Samira smiled softly in the dark. But we are happy, one said, and the others nodded. That simple truth meant everything. The village had little in the way of internet or modern communication. Sometimes Michael traveled to the nearest town to check email or send messages back home. Friends asked, "When are you coming back? What are you doing out there?" Others joked, "Are you married yet?" Michael would hesitate, swallow hard, and smile to himself. He wasn't just married. He was living a life that most people would never understand. How could he explain this to friends who only knew city lights and cubicle walls? He often thought of his parents, both long gone. If they were alive, how would they react? Would his practical, business-minded father understand? Time passed. His family grew, rooted deeply into the village. The visitor homes brought in modest income, and his involvement in community affairs continued to expand. The women worked together to raise the children, and Michael shared stories with guests about the village's past and present. Respectful travelers arrived, drawn not by luxury, but authenticity. The village slowly embraced small changes, without ever losing its soul. One crisp autumn afternoon, Michael stood atop a small hill overlooking the village. The setting sun cast golden light across the valley. He could hear his children playing in the distance, their laughter warm and wild. Behind him, Fatima, Aisha, and Samira approached and sat beside him on the grass. Fatima gently took his hand. Aisha laughed. "So, what are we making for dinner tonight?" Samira pointed at the children, calling, "Careful, little ones." The last rays of sunlight brushed their faces, painting them in soft amber. Michael looked at them, his wives, his companions, his heart, and thought of the life he once lived. Endless office hours, the cold glow of city lights, the noise, the emptiness. It all felt like another man's life now. Here, surrounded by a family that loved him and a community that accepted him, he had found something better than happiness. He had found belonging. Life here wasn't perfect. There would still be hard seasons, illness, misunderstandings, economic burdens. But Michael believed deeply. With these women beside him, and this village around him, they could face anything. The sun dipped below the horizon, and the first stars flickered in the deepening blue sky. Michael wrapped his arms gently around each of his wives and whispered, "I'm truly lucky to have you." Fatima, Aisha, and Samira laughed softly, then replied in unison, "And we are lucky to have you." And as night wrapped the village in silence, a quiet truth glowed in Michael's heart. Life could be so beautiful.